Hey everyone, welcome back to the Live with Audacity podcast. You're listening to episode number 30. Can you believe we've had 30 episodes? Wow, that's so cool. Today I get to talk to Nicole Rule, founder and owner of greatestworth.com, where she guides women to make a life they love, starting with their money. Through her process of paying off $100,000 in debt in 26 months, she learned that money management is only 30% numbers and 70% beliefs, mindset, and habits. Her passion is to guide women to live into their full potential while creating a money life that supports their dreams. And you know, I also want to help you build a life that supports your dreams. So let's dive in. You're listening to the Live with Audacity podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Stewart. Audacity is defined by Merriam-Webster as intrepid boldness or disregard for normal constraints. And that's exactly what we have here. The Live with Audacity podcast is aimed at giving you the courage to explore your someday dreams, do things your way, and start making things happen in your life right now. I'm a mama to 4 kiddos ranging from college student to kindergartner, wife to a high school football and track coach, and a multi-passionate entrepreneur. Together with my guests, we're going to teach you how to live with audacity and intentionality, discover and utilize your unique skills and talents, and step into who you are meant to be in order to make your someday dreams a reality. Are you ready? Here we go. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning back into the Live with Audacity podcast. I, of course, am going to say it. I am so excited about today's episode because I get to talk to Nicole Rule of The Greatest Worth today, and we are going to talk all things money. And actually, we are recording this episode in the middle of the catastrophe known as COVID-19. And so we are going to dive into all the things about that. But first, Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I'm really excited for this.
Me too. I see that you and your husband paid off $100,000 in debt in 26 months.
We did.
And had a baby during that time. So
Yes, we did.
please tell me how the heck you did it, because I need some help, girl.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting at this point as I look back, and I don't necessarily know that I would encourage everyone to do it the way I did it, because what we did is we basically went all in, which is totally my personality, is to just dive into something and go all in one thing hard. So I was a physical therapist at the time, and my husband was too. And so I ended up getting 3 jobs so that I could work any day of the week that I wanted to. I had some on-call jobs. And then my husband, I worked a weekend shift, and my husband worked days that I didn't work. And then we got a nanny for like 3 days a week for the kids. And we just worked all the time and never saw each other. But that's how we were able to do it so quickly.
Yeah.
We just made as much money as possible and put it all towards the debt, right? So we were budgeting super strictly, and then all the extra went towards the debt. So there were points in there where we would put like $6,000 a month on debt. That's how strict.
Bananas.
Yeah, it was bananas.
That's so incredible. Okay, so what were your jobs?
So we were both physical therapists. So I worked in the hospital as an acute care physical therapist. They were all physical therapy jobs. And then I did home care. And then I worked at a nursing home too. So I could, like alternate my schedules to basically work any day of the week.
That's fantastic. And how exhausted were you?
Oh, I was so tired because, as you say, I was also pregnant. I got pregnant in the middle of it. So I was also super emotional. So there were times in there, I mean, paying off debt in itself is just a journey where you kind of start to discover yourself. I mean, that's when we started to basically develop the greatest worth process, which is figuring out what your money stories are and your money mindset and creating a vision for your life and creating values. And all of that is really emotional work. And then add to it that I was pregnant and exhausted. And there were times when I was like on the floor crying because it was so hard. Like it was a really hard process. But you know, when you're out of something that's really hard, it's similar, right, to the COVID-19. When you're in it, you're like, this is the most horrible thing I have ever experienced. And then when
Right.
you're out of it, you're like, I am amazing and I am so strong and I can do anything. So,
Anything. Oh,
yeah.
man.
So, yeah, I wouldn't like not do it again. You know what I mean? As hard as it was still amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so incredible. I am so excited to dive into all this. So how in the heck did you stay committed for so long?
Oh, that's a good question. So what eventually came, like I said, is we started. So at first we were like, we're just going to get rid of this debt. And that's not a big enough motivator. Like pretty
Right?
quickly you're like, screw this, like I'm going to go on vacation with all this extra money I have. So what ended up happening is we figured out our values and we figured out our vision. It's so we kind of made like a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan. And then we were like, you know, the only way we're going to be able to accomplish those things is if we have financial freedom. And part of that financial freedom is to get rid of this debt. So we knew that our big vision for our life was not possible. Like it was resting on the foundation of our money. And our money was out of control. Like we were overspending every month. We were spending more than we made every month. Like literally, you can't go anywhere. You're actually going backwards, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, like we just knew it really was the vision and having a why. And for us, it was having like a joint why, like doing it together was even more meaningful because when one of us was really down or super emotional, you know, the other one could pick up the slack and be like, no, this is why we're doing it. Why don't you go take a bath or go take a
Yeah.
rest or, you know, just helping each other take care of ourselves in the midst of it. Cause you get really down in the midst of something that hard.
Yeah. I can only imagine. My husband and I have jointly tried to get together and pay off our debt so many times, and it seems
Really?
like yeah, it seems like we just get so sidetracked or something comes up with the kids or whatever, and it's like it's so daunting, and
Yeah.
I don't know how to stay on track to do it. I mean, we've done Dave Ramsey, and it still was just like, "Oh, this is such a huge mountain to climb, forget it." You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, we actually use Dave Ramsey too, and I love Dave Ramsey, but I also think Dave Ramsey is like a formula that at some point like doesn't work for everyone. You know, like at some
Right.
point you kind of have to figure it out for yourself. Like, why are you doing this? I learned this, I can't remember where I learned it. It might have been oh gosh, I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, I'll think of it and let you know. But he does this thing where basically you do a 7 layers of why. Have you ever heard of that? So
No,
like
never.
so you say, why do I want to pay off debt? And so your first layer is the first answer that comes into your head because I'm tired of paying debt payments, right? Well,
Mhm.
that's not a very deep reason and it's not a very compelling reason that's going to keep you going. It'll keep you going for a couple months, but then it's going to get hard and you're going to be like, screw this. So what you need to do is go deeper and you're like, okay, why do I want to not have debt payments? Well, I want to be able to go on vacation with my family. Well, why do you want to go on vacation? And so you can see how it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and it'll eventually get to this. If you go, he says 7 layers, it gets to this really meaningful, like heartfelt reason that why you want to do this really hard thing. And
I
that
love
why,
that.
yeah, that deep why will keep you going. That really will keep you going. So I wonder if you tried that, that might be a little more motivating than just, I don't want debt payments anymore.
Yeah. Girl, as soon as we get off this call, that's exactly what my husband and I are gonna do.
Yes. And especially if you have a good relationship with your husband and he's already like willing to do it, totally do it together. I think it'll be a really compelling and it's really connecting. To pay off debt together is a super connecting experience.
I totally agree and really can teach you how to work together. I feel like one of the biggest struggles, at least in our marriage, has been how to communicate with each other. You know, we
Yeah.
both speak English, but they're two totally different languages,
Yes.
two different dialects, totally.
Yeah, for sure.
So I feel like accomplishing something that huge can really strengthen that foundation. So I think
Yeah.
that's really neat.
Yeah.
Um, how did you get your spouse on board?
It's funny because he actually got me on board. I was actually
Oh,
like, heck no, this is dumb. Like, we're fine. We're frugal. We don't spend as much as everyone else. It was all comparison in my mind. I was like, we don't spend as much as our friends, or we don't do this and they're doing that. So we must be fine. And it was such an interesting way, now that I think about it, to like live, because
yeah.
that doesn't mean anything, especially because most people are living beyond their means as well. That's the truth of it. So eventually, what happened that got me on board is I had our second baby, and I didn't want to go back to work, but I had to, like, I ran the numbers basically and was like, how many hours do I have to go back to work in order to pay our bills? And I had to go back to work full time just to
Oh,
like pay the bills.
that's
So
so
then I was
depressing,
like,
right?
yeah. And I was like, we're never going to get anywhere. Like, there will be, so I forecasted like 10 years. I'm actually, one of my strengths on the Strength Finder is futuristic. And so I'm always like, okay, what's our life going to look like in 10 years? And I was like, it's going to look exactly the same. There's no way
Is
it can't.
isn't
Right.
that so terrifying?
Yes. And so I was like,
Oh,
no, I do not want it to look exactly the same. And then that's when I came to him and I was like, please help me figure this out. Like, let's do this together. And he was ready to go. He had been ready
yeah.
to go for a couple years, actually.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I feel like my husband and I, like one of us gets ready at one time and then we get the other one on board and then it gets a little bit hard and then
Yeah.
we just stop communicating altogether about it and then, we get back to a place and we're like, okay, we really need to do this and it's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah. But you're all about like living with audacity, like
I know,
living.
but I can do that in some ways, but then in other
Yeah,
ways I'm
not
like,
with your
"Oh,
money.
it's just too much."
Yeah, and
It
I
just
think
takes
that's
too much
that's what
energy.
that's where my message kind of came out of, where it was like, so I teach people about like pillars of living your best life. And so it's like relationships and your calling and your home. And there's a few pillars. And then money is
Yeah.
kind of the foundation to it all. Because if you have your money in order, you can literally go after anything.
Anything. I love that
Anything.
so much. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. This is so exciting for me.
I'm so glad. Your enthusiasm is very contagious.
I mean, look, we can't all be perfect at everything, okay?
No, yeah, that's true. That is true.
So I love that I'm getting to talk to you about this and be vulnerable with you about it because there are things that and I teach this all the time is that we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses, and being able to be self-aware about what our weaknesses are only allow us to then make them a strength for us. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so I think that if anyone is listening to this right now, get really honest with yourself about what your struggles are, whether it's money or otherwise. But
Hmm.
specifically right now, we're talking about money, and I think it's very easy to, like you said, compare yourself to other people and be like, "Nah, it's fine. I'm doing
Yes.
fine. It's
Yeah.
okay." And
Uh-huh.
and kind of brush it under the rug.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what do
totally.
you feel like people do that easily?
Like, just brush things under the rug or
Oh,
say,
yeah.
"I'm fine." Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think people really fully grasp how important their financial life is to their mental health, is to their relationship with their spouse and their children, how important it is to, like, living out who they're meant to be in the world. Like, all of those things kind of hinge on your money life. I really truly believe that, because like you can basically have underlying anxiety, right? Pretty much that's what I ended up with. I just had
Yeah.
this kind of baseline anxiety all the time humming in the background, because I was never, I couldn't ever go after anything. Does that make any sense? I definitely couldn't live with
Yeah.
audacity. Yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, when you're so strapped financially, you don't, yeah, like you just don't even have the wiggle room to be able to, quit your job and focus on,
Yes.
starting a business or,
Yeah.
just things like that. And so, to be perfectly honest with you, we sold, our big house that we bought before I had my fourth baby, and
Mhm.
because we were strapped so hard that we couldn't even we couldn't even get any headway going on our debt at all, and our
Yeah.
credit was not in the best place, so we couldn't even really refinance anything to get some headway. And it was exhausting and it was mentally draining. And so we sold
Mhm.
the house and we actually moved out to our property and, bought a very cheap trailer to live in.
Mhm.
And that's what we're doing right now. So we can pay off our debt. And, um,
Good for
it's been
you.
huge. Yeah, thank you. It's been huge for our marriage because we're both so much happier not being totally completely stressed to the max
Mhm.
with our bills, like we do have quite a bit more freedom now.
Mhm.
Of course we still want to get to the place where our debt is paid off so we can build our house.
Right.
And so that's what we're working on now. But yeah, you got to be able to have some sort of wiggle room so that you can actually go after your dreams. I completely, totally agree with that.
Yeah, like you need to have some free space in your mind, right? But if you're consumed with how to pay the next bill, it's nearly impossible to
Agreed.
even dream. Yeah.
I love that so much. How has your life changed? But my mouth is not working. How has your life changed since becoming debt free?
Goodness, it's changed a lot because I mean, start with the fact that I started this business, right? Like paying off my debt led me to helping friends. Like basically, friends and family were asking me how I did it. And then my church actually wanted me to create like a course. So my husband and I taught a course at church a few times. And then after that, I was like, I really love doing this. And this work is so meaningful to me. And I know that it changes people's lives. So we're going to start a business. So then I started a business, which is so scary because physical therapy is a pretty solid job. Like it's just kind of, we're going to need it for a really long time. And so it
Yeah.
feels really comfortable, but I knew that I wasn't happy and I knew it wasn't like my calling, that I needed to stretch myself and go for it. And paying off our debt is what set us up to kind of take that risk to start this business. So starting a business, we trying to think what else. It's just been so beautiful to just live a life that's aligned with our values. We're more free to like give. So we did give when we were paying off debt, but it was like super regimented. And now it's so easy to give because even in this time of COVID-19, my husband and I are like, well, we're pretty good. I mean, my husband's a realtor, so he probably lost his job, but because we don't have debt, we're pretty set up to just help people. So we're like, okay, how can we be helpful? We're going to keep our membership at the Y, even though we can't go to the Y because they're doing all these programs and they're feeding the kids who aren't in school. They're doing all these cool things. So we're like, how can we continue to like support these organizations and people that are doing cool things in the world? So it just is a really freeing feeling to not have that
Yeah.
debt anymore. Yeah, and then we're right
I
now we were working on paying off our mortgage. I don't know if that's going to that has to kind of pause right now. That's what I'm telling most people right now. Honestly, if you're trying to pay off debt right now, you should probably just put all that extra if you still have extra in a savings account. And then when we kind of know what's going to happen, you can just take that money and put it towards your debt, but you might need that
Yes.
money. We don't really know what's going to happen. So I would just kind of pause everything right now.
I love that you segued into that because I actually that was my next question is how can we take this time during COVID-19 to look at our money and figure out what the heck we're doing right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of steps, honestly, and I've been kind of going through it on my podcast, but some of the things I've been telling people is to really, you got to sit down together if you're a couple or a partnership and just figure out like, what do you want to do? Like, what is your plan here? Like, do you still want to continue to pay off debt? Then, maybe you would pause and you would take all that money and put it in a savings account so that you have the emergency fund. But maybe you realize like, no, we need to like pivot. One of you or both of you lost your jobs, and so you need to figure out how to make money from home. Like, I don't know your current situation, but you got to have that conversation. So having that conversation about how you're going to handle it. And then I tell people, like, we call it an emergency budget meeting, which is
Okay.
basically like going through your money. Like, so if you have a budget, do you guys have a budget already? Do you live by a
Yes,
budget?
we do have a budget.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's helpful because you already have like categories and you kind of know how much money is going to each thing. So
Yeah.
that's helpful. So now I say, so go through your budget like with a fine tooth comb and kind of do a needs versus wants budget. So you're going to create basically a bare bones budget, a budget that will, you'll keep the lights on and you'll pay your mortgage and pay your bills and your utilities, but you're not going to continue paying for things that are not necessary, especially if you're low on funds or you lost a job, right? You got to
Right. Yeah.
figure out how much it takes you to live each month. Just
And I feel like,
support your needs, kind of live.
yes. And I totally feel like people get so bent out of shape about having to do a budget, but it's not even like a budget like it doesn't have to be super restrictive in my opinion.
Right.
I feel like the whole point of doing a budget is really just to say, okay, I over the last 3 months, what have I spent my money on? And
Yeah.
being able to open your eyes and say, "Oh, shoot. Went through my bank account and I didn't even realize I was still paying for YouTube TV. I thought I canceled that."
Right.
Or,
Right.
you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's money flying out the window that you didn't know about. Or,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, we spent $2,000 eating out last month. What in the wide world is happening?" Like,
Yeah. And
you know
that's real. That's like a real thing. That's what we
I
did for
know.
sure. We spent so much money eating out. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
tell
know.
people it's literally just awareness. That's all you're trying to get right now is awareness of
Yes.
where your money's going and how much money you need to exist each month. And then
Yeah.
that you can like project out, right? If you have some savings, you can say, okay, it takes me $5,000 a month to live, just our needs. And we have $15,000 saved. So we have 3 months that literally we could have no income and we could be okay. So maybe we should look for some resources that are out there. Maybe we should be getting the kids the free lunches that are available. Whatever you feel like is necessary, it just gives you awareness. And honestly, you think it's going to make you more anxious, but it's actually going to make you less anxious because you're going to kind of
Yeah.
know what you're doing. You're going to be in action. You're going to kind of make a plan. It really helps.
Yes, I want to talk a little bit about why ignoring your money is limiting your ability to live your best life, because that's one of the topics that you wrote down here, and obviously we're talking about that right now. But talk to us a little bit more about why, because I tend to get into this situation where it's like I've done the budget and I know I have this much money to, go out to eat or buy drinks or, whatever it is that I'm thinking about right now. Um and then, like, because I don't track it, I just always assume that there's enough there. So
Right.
why tell us about why ignoring it and just, you know, leaping and expecting the net to be there is probably not the best
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Well, okay. There's a couple things. So, one of them we kind of touched on already. And I truly believe because I lived through it that not knowing makes you more anxious than knowing. And so, the not knowing would like keep me up at night. And I would be like, I don't even know why I'm anxious right now. Do you know what I mean? Like I just did not even know what was happening. So that is one huge reason. I really think that once you know and once you have awareness, that really helps you to get to a point of like, oh, cool, I have $50 left in my husband and I call it blow money, like the money that we just get
Yeah.
to blow. So like I
Yeah.
have it, fun money, I think people call it. Oh, I have $50 left. Cool. Like it's not restrictive, right? If you want to give yourself $100, give yourself $100. Like that's it's up to you. Like you don't have to look at it like this huge restrictive thing. So number one is I truly believe you'd be less anxious if you actually knew.
Yeah.
And then number two, kind of what I say is I really want people, like it is my heart's desire for people to be living into like their very best selves. And I think that takes work and it takes awareness and attention. And so then that's why I created the pillars. So like having solid relationships is really important to that. Health, so mind, body, and soul, that's really important to like living your best life. So all of those pillars, how I see it is that money is the foundation, like I said before. So say you want to get healthy and you're kind of struggling. Well, you can see like if you're struggling with your money too, you're going to be like, I can't join a gym, or healthy food costs more, or you know what I mean? Like there's these
Right.
obstacles that money creates. But if you have your money on a solid foundation where it's supporting you and you know that health now is one of your values, well, you're going to put money towards it and you're going to be okay with that, even if it costs more, or even if it's
Yeah.
taking money away from another area, you're going to be okay with that because you know that health is important to you. And I'm trying to think of another area. Maybe dining out goes down a little bit because you're putting more money into buying uh,
Healthy food.
protein powder so that you can make, and vegetables and fruit so that you can make smoothies every day. I don't know.
I love that.
Something. I'm making this up, but
Yeah.
there are all these pillars to living your best life really rests on a foundation of solid money management that supports you in going after all of those things.
Okay, so couple of questions.
Okay.
Obviously, because we're recording a podcast. But how do I? So if we sit down and do a budget and we realize, we should probably cut out a few non-essentials, which
Mm-hmm.
that's a buzzword now, right? Um,
Yes, yes, yes.
how do I get my husband or my spouse? Let me rephrase. How do I get my spouse on board if I'm like, no, we need to just get rid of, Netflix, which I would never agree to, but
Right.
how do
Not
like
right now, yeah.
not right now. But like how do we make those how do we what's the word I'm looking for?
Like,
Negotiate those and
oh, that's a good word.
come to an agreement.
Okay. So I truly believe, especially if your spouse is not necessarily into all of this, it's all about doing the vision and the values work first. So you can define your individual values. Like I have individual values and so does my husband. And then we have family values that we all kind of live by. My kids are still pretty little, so they don't necessarily have their own values defined. But and then we've created a vision, my husband and I, of like a 10-year plan and kind of what we're working towards. And
Mhm.
so when I tell people how to make a vision, I teach them how to do the whole thing. So they break that down into goals and then they pick one goal that they focus on and then they create action steps on how they can go towards that goal. So that's kind of how you break it down and have one thing you're focusing on versus kind of nitpicking about the little things. Now, your goal might be to pay off your one credit card. I don't know. And so because your goal is to pay off that credit card, then the conversation about cutting things out might be very pertinent in this case. But what happens when you have the vision and the values in place, you can go through those and be like, okay, does Netflix align with our values and our vision right now? And it might not, but it also
Right.
might. Like, it might be part of your health, right? Your mental health for this time. So it's that is a helpful way of looking at it. When you're just like arguing about it, there's a way to be like, okay, well, this is what we said our vision is, and this is what we said our values are. And somehow we've got to cut some money out. And if you don't want to cut money out there, then how can we cut money out somewhere else? Or how can we figure out how to bring in more income, right? So that the income could then go to the debt. There's
Right.
different ways of thinking about it.
Right. And then I think too that you get at that point where you're like, oh, okay, do I want to work more and
Right.
bring in more income, or do I want to get rid of Netflix?
Yeah.
Just Netflix as an example. But yeah,
Yeah.
you have to make those, you get in that situation where um, you make those sacrifices or those negotiations. So I think that's brilliant.
And there's also a way
Um,
too to phrase it where you're like, I'm saying no to this so that I can say yes to this. Rather than just being like, we're
yes.
saying no to this and no to this and no to this and no to this.
Right.
There's a
Yeah,
bigger
because
thing,
that
there's a bigger picture that you're saying yes to.
yeah, and I think too that is part of the mindset place, right?
Yeah.
And the part of the mindset bit of it is that it, a lot of times we, get real aggressive and we're like, we're not going to spend any extra money on anything and we're going to
Right.
restrict ourselves. And
Right.
we get so like depressed about it that we're
Yes.
like, forget
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and I think that's really valuable that you pointed that out, is reframing it in your mind saying, no, we're not going to go out to eat 3 nights a week. We're only going to go, once every other week now. And we're
Mm.
not saying no to going out to eat. We're saying yes to putting money in our savings account so that we can build our house, or we can,
Yes. Yeah.
go on this vacation or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that's really valuable. Tell me how do you break it down and get people to dive into what their values are?
My process for that is honestly not super complicated. Like, I give people like a list of, I don't know, it's like 100 values. So I tell people to just kind of pick a word, and it could just be
Mm,
like 3 words. It could be 5 words. Maybe you have 10 values. Some people like picking a phrase. Like, I think of Rachel Hollis because one of her company values is we choose joy. So that
yeah.
can be a value, right? Or your value can just be joy. Like, that could be the value. So when I teach people, I tell them to just pick one word, but then you have to define it, because, Rachel Hollis saying we choose joy might look very different than my value of joy. Like, maybe it's not important to me to like have dance parties or whatever it is, that she chooses. Because what happens when we define it, right? Like, so she says, okay, we choose joy. So we do dance parties and we do these things. And maybe some of those things costs her business money, but she knows that is so meaningful to her to do that,
Right.
right? So she is cool putting her money there and loves it. And it means so much to her. So that is what a
And
value
knows
is all
that it
about.
knows that it returns back to her, as far as, because I'm spending this money on this thing so that my company and my employees can feel joyful,
Yes.
then I know they're going to be happier to work with me and
Yes,
happier to show up every day. And so
exactly.
it comes back to you in ways that, maybe people don't really think of if they don't define that.
Exactly. So that is why I say, so you pick your words, but then you actually have to define it, because I'm trying to think of one. One of ours is that would be different than everyone's. Oh, is community. So one of our values is community, but how we live that out is we like to have people over for dinner, which obviously is not happening right now, but
I know.
we like to reach out to our neighbors and make them feel welcome. So even having neighbors over for dinner, people we don't know, but building community is really important to us. But we had to like build that into our budget because having families over for dinner can be expensive if you do like
Yeah.
4 a month or whatever. So that is how we defined it, was like building community in all of our networks. So it was like our children's school and our neighborhood and our church, like all of those networks were important to us. So, but that might be completely different for someone else, and it might play out very differently in action. So it's important to define them too.
Yeah, I love that so much. That's
Yeah.
so man, that's really incredible, and I think that's very very valuable to pass on. Wow, that's so
Thanks.
good.
Thank you.
Um yeah, for sure. No, I am learning so much. I promise. Like I think this is just so incredible and valuable for people.
Awesome.
Um what is one thing you wish you would have had the courage to do sooner?
Oh, I think there is like really so much I wish I had done sooner. I honestly have wanted to be an entrepreneur since I got out of college. So, I mean, what would that be? Like age 22. I am 42 now, and I did not start my business until I was 40. That was my first business. There were a few things that I would like start and stop over the years, but it was all insecurities and other people's opinions that I let stop me. And I really wish I would have had the courage to just do it quicker because it's been such a
Do you
meaningful
feel
journey.
like
Oh, sorry.
yeah, that's awesome. I know. No, no, no. I'm sorry. Do you feel like though, you said that you started and stopped some other things. Do you feel like, I mean, obviously you feel like some of it was, your own limiting beliefs getting in your way, but do you also feel like maybe it just wasn't quite the thing that you were supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel in my like heart and soul and bones that greatest worth is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. So it does feel like that is part of it. That it was just
Yeah.
timing and I needed to do the journey, right, in order to get to the point where I could start a
To
business
get
about it.
here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I'm looking at your website right now, and I'm looking at the how it works, the 5 steps. Explain those a little bit to us since, obviously people can go to the link in the show notes, but,
Mhm.
since they're not looking at it right now, can you kind of explain those to us?
Yes, I'll do them like just real briefly. And I have workbooks for
Okay,
each of the steps that are super affordable. And by the time this goes out, I'm even going to make like a bundle of workbooks to make it even more affordable for people. But step
perfect.
one is it's all about your mindset and your money stories. So, money stories I consider are like what you grew up with around money. And a lot of it goes back to like our early adulthood, like when we started going out on our own, like how did we deal with money then? Because that's the kind of stuff that stays with us and becomes our truth, even though it doesn't have to be a truth. Like beliefs
Yeah,
are, yeah, the beliefs are just something we've decided is true, right? That's what a belief is. And so you can decide something else is true for yourself. So it's kind of going through all of that for yourself. It's a lot of journaling and writing out your story and figuring out your limiting beliefs and changing those if that's what you would like to do. So that's step one. And then step two is creating and defining your values. So we kind of talked about that process already. And that's really all of that step is.
mhm.
Step three, oh, I should say in each of the steps, there's also a money step. So in step one, I can't remember the exact process, but it's like track your spending. So there's a money
Oh,
step that is part of each of these too.
awesome.
So step three is, creating your 10-year vision and then going all the way down where you make the goals, picking one focus, and then creating action steps. It goes all the way down to really specific things you can do right now to work on your vision. And then step four is when you actually create the budget. So you've done all this background work with your money. So you've like made a list of your bills and your expenses. You've done all of this background work in step 1 through 3. And then step four is when you actually make the budget. So that's all that step 4 is. There's a video tutorial in there and I show you how to set it all up and create a budget. And then step 5 is there's no workbook for this one, but it's stuff like, joining my group coaching or kind of taking it a step further and getting the support you need so that you stay on track.
Yeah, I love it. That's fantastic. Um, okay, what would you suggest someone do if they do end up going and kind of tracking their money and their spending and they realize that they're totally overstretched in their credit and that they are having a hard time making ends meet because of their debt?
Mhm. Like they don't have enough money to pay their bills?
Um, enough money to pay their bills or just not enough wiggle room, like where they're just barely being able to pay all of the bills and,
Okay.
buy the groceries and things like that.
Okay.
What would be the first step you would tell them?
Um, so what needs to happen, I guess, is to figure out if all of those things that you're spending money on are what you want to be spending money on. Because often once we start getting this awareness and tracking things and making a budget, you find things like you said, like, oh my gosh, I'm still paying for YouTube TV, or oh my gosh, I have a Y membership that I haven't used in a year and a half, or those things. So there's probably, hopefully, some things that maybe you could get rid of that might
Mhm.
give you a little wiggle room. If there's not anything you can get rid of, then somehow you might need to go to the income side, right? And figure out how to find more income. Sometimes people have savings. And I say if they have like a large amount of savings, I know this might not be for everyone, but they're kind of like hoarding money. This is a different mindset than than another. But a lot of people do this. You'd be surprised where they have this enormous amount of savings and they're living paycheck to paycheck and have a lot of debt. And so
Wow,
I'm like,
really?
okay, yeah. So they still have car loans and they have credit card debt. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want the debt? Like, is that something you want? And they never really thought about it. They just thought, well, you buy a car with a loan. And I'm like,
Right.
you can, but you can
But you
also,
don't have to.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can pay it off or you can pay cash for a car. And it's just like changing your mindset happens really slowly. And so then they'll have these aha moments and they'll be like, okay, well, I'm going to pay off my car. And then that gives them, a huge amount of wiggle room. I can't believe I haven't had a car payment in years. And when I worked with someone the other day, I was like, is this normal? It's like $500 is like a normal car payment nowadays.
Oh, yeah,
It,
girl.
it was
Like,
insane.
I feel like more than that is a normal car payment.
And that's just one. And people don't have just
Yeah,
one car. So I was like,
right.
how do people do this? So yeah, so there's that way, or you might have to figure out how to get more income. If you literally are kind of like my husband and I were, where we were overspending every month and living paycheck to paycheck, you got to figure out a way to get more
Yeah.
income. Yeah,
I
unfortunately.
love it. Yeah, so genius. Wow, okay, I think there's a lot of information here,
Yeah.
and yeah, totally, and people are gonna, need some time to digest it all. What
Yes.
is one last tip you have for people, dealing with their finances? Maybe they, are not working right now because of the situation that we're in with the virus. What is one last either mindset or money trick or tip that you can give them for right now?
I really would say just start with awareness. It's such a beautiful, easy step. It doesn't have to be condemning. It doesn't have to be shameful. I just started a meditation practice, and with meditation, they talk a lot about how your thoughts don't mean anything. Like they're just there. And when we can begin to just see that things are just there and not make it mean anything, it's like you can be in this much more kind of calm place. And that's how I want you to look at your money, is to just write it down and have some awareness. So look at all of your bills and look at all of your income and just start being aware of it It doesn't mean anything about you, right? You don't have to go into
Right.
this deep shame spiral about all the
Yeah.
things you did in the past. It's literally just there and they're just numbers. And then from that awareness, then you can start to take any kind of baby step you want to make a plan of how you're going to deal with it. But you have to just start with the awareness.
Yes, perfect. I love it so much. And I think that's such a simple step that people can take
Yeah.
and learn a lot from that. Um, okay, so let's do a quick rapid fire. Tell me a book, article, person, or talk that's changed your life.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I know I mentioned Rachel Hollis before, and I would mention that again. She really so I read Girl Wash Your Face and then I read Girl Stop Apologizing, and they both have been so meaningful in my life and just really, helped me to be okay with who I am. One of the things she always says is other people's opinions of you are none of your business. And that, like I said, has been really meaningful to me in being a business owner and a friend and a wife. Yeah, it's been a huge book for me.
Yeah. No, I love that too. Because Girl Wash Your Face was and when I started following her after I read Girl Wash Your Face, it just was one of those things where like I felt like she really slapped me over the head and like I knew all that stuff. I believed all that stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
But then realizing like it's truly up to me that if I live up to my potential or not
Yeah.
was like the biggest aha moment I've ever had of my life. It was
Yeah.
huge. So
Yeah.
so that's yeah, I love that that's what you said. So tell me about your favorite Friday night at home.
Well, we're so nerdy, but it's like every Friday night is movie night at our house. And normally we don't cook. So it's either like pizza night for the kids or we have leftover night. So it's just super chill and I love it so much. And we just watch a movie and it's one of my favorite
Yeah,
times
I love
together.
that.
Yeah.
What's your favorite movie together as a family? Do y'all have like one that y'all come back to a lot?
Um that's a good question. Well, now it seems to be like Frozen 2. Have y'all seen that yet? Oh
Of
my god.
course, yeah.
That one, like,
I
makes me
love
cry.
that movie.
It makes me cry every single time, it's so beautiful.
I love that movie because and especially now being the last several years so into personal growth and personal development,
Yes.
there are so many lessons in those 2 movies,
Yes!
Frozen 1 and Frozen 2. You're like, "Oh, yes, girl, yes,
Yes.
yes."
So all the
And
time now, I'm just like, "What's my next right step? What's the next right
Ah,
step?"
exactly. Oh, I love
Yeah.
it so much. That's so great. Um, what was your dream job as a kid?
I always wanted to be like a doctor or a veterinarian. And I honestly was like pre-med in college. And then I was like, I don't want to be a doctor. Like, I don't want to have to work all the time. So that's how I ended up in physical therapy school.
I love that. Yeah, physical therapy it's so crazy because I feel like every time someone tells me what their dream job as a kid, I'm like, "Oh yeah, for a little bit I wanted to do that too."
Yeah.
Um, but physical therapy totally was on my radar there for a little while.
Was it?
I had majorly sprained my ankle in track, which is laughable to think that I was running track at all. But but I had really sprained my ankle and my physical therapist was so awesome. I was like, this is a cool job. I could totally do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've always been obsessed with other people's jobs. I don't know why. It's a weird thing. But
They're
anywho,
interesting. It's interesting to see how other
it's
people
so
live. Yeah.
right. It's so cool. Okay. So tell me the next vacation that you're planning with your family.
Well, we
Or
were
do you
planning
vacation with all your kids?
we were gonna go every spring break. We usually go camping. We have like a little pop up camper, and we go to the beach, and that got canceled. So we're not going to
Oh.
that, but we're gonna hopefully for our summer vacation. Every summer we take the same vacation to this inn in South Carolina on the beach, and it is like the most amazing thing. She cooks 2 meals a day, and we just sit on the beach and hang out, and it's the best. It's amazing.
What beach is it?
It's called Pawleys Island. in South Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, and the inn is called the Pelican Inn, if anyone wants to go there. It's amazing.
I am actually writing that down because I've always wanted to visit the beaches in South Carolina,
There
and
you go.
so I am going to do it.
It's amazing. It's really incredible.
That's so fun. Okay, what is your best advice to help our listeners live with audacity?
Well, I guess because it's my advice for myself, but don't let your inner voice talk you out of going after those dreams, right? Like we are all made for something. So go for it and don't worry about what other people are thinking or saying.
Yes, that's perfect
Yeah.
and completely, totally, 100% agree with. Where can people find you to get more information about your offerings?
You can go to my website, which is greatestworth.com, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Greatest Worth. I have a Facebook group on that's called the Greatest Worth Family, and I do live videos once a week there that are like a coaching session basically, and people can ask questions. And then I have a shop on the website they can go to. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff and all kinds of free stuff
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
I love it. This has been so much fun, and I hope that people take away a lot of tips and tricks from you about how to start getting their money in order. Yes, because but that sounds so daunting, but really
Yeah.
just start to you know what I mean, like really just even start to look at their money and stop being so afraid of it.
Yes.
It's been so valuable for me, and I can't wait to dig into my 7 layers of why. That's just
Yes.
I wish I would have heard about this a long time ago. I can't believe it. But I think that's a really huge tip, at least for me. Other people, if you have not heard of it yet, then I hope that you dig into it too. Nicole, thank you
Yes.
so much for being here. This was incredible.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm so grateful that you had me.
Hey y'all, I had to jump in here real quick because I need a favor. If you are loving the Live with Audacity podcast, I need you to do me a big solid favor and share it with your friends, share it on social media, and go to the Apple iTunes link and click subscribe, rate it, review it. I need to know your feedback, and I want to keep putting this out for you, so I really need your help to get the message out. Thank you so, so much for your loyalty and your super kind and sweet words. They mean so terribly much to me.